Water, earth, fire, air. Long ago, I didn't know anything about the last airbender. Then, everything changed when my best friend said, let's do a podcast. We could call it Avatar State Radio. 6,953 days had passed before I discovered Avatar. Not the Blue Cats, but a 19-year-old cartoon. Like Aang, I have a lot to learn, but I believe I'll love Avatar The Last Airbender. Welcome to this week's edition of Avatar State Radio. I am the last podbender, Kevin Gallagher, joined by
Mike D'Angelo. I am the Pavatar.
Yes. And we're here to talk about Book 1, Water, of the animated series. If you are just listening to this episode 16 of this podcast, you probably should go to the beginning. Not that this podcast has a story, but if you've never watched Avatar The Last Airbender, we're going to spoil some things.
I mean, it kind of has a story. You learn a lot about us between the takes.
That's true. I mean, I think I've been the last podbender from almost the beginning, but you just recently have been graduated to the Pavatar.
I gotta admit, I don't know what the Pavatar is. Is that the podcast Avatar?
Yeah. But only for Atla, because you don't do many podcasts.
No,
but
that's true.
The ones that you do, you have a lot of knowledge about the subject.
That's true. I am a repository of useless information.
So this week we are chatting about episode 16, The Deserter, which is, it's funny, up until like the, I guess, halfway through point, I thought the Deserter was a completely different character.
Oh yeah, I guess you thought it was Chey.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And who, like, you see him, like, that's the first, you see Momo and then you see Chey, like, first. That's who you see.
Right.
And like, poor Chey. I mean, he's a character that seems crazy, right?
He's an adorable little dum-dum.
And like, our poor little boy here, like, he doesn't really get to grow in this episode. And if anything, like, he just gets left behind, which is really sad.
It's true. But we make up for that by the voice actor of Chey being the Crypt Keeper. So he's done some bad karma in the past.
Oh, that is awesome. That is awesome.
So, like when we open the episode, we see the wanted board, and that's where we're introduced to the people who are wanted. Obviously, we have Aang. Did you notice the other ones on the board as well?
Well, the only other one I noticed is the one they zoomed up on, which is who we were introduced to later.
You did not notice the blue spirit on that.
I didn't. That's awesome.
Yeah, you got the blue spirit. You've got Chey and Jeong Jeong, who Jeong Jeong is the deserter that we'll discover later. But those were the four people who were on the wanted board.
Oh, I need to go back and rewatch that scene specifically for the blue spirit.
Yep, he was he was the bottom right one, I think. They started to zoom in on, I think it was it Chey that they zoomed in on, or was it Jeong Jeong? I feel like the hair. So the only problem was, I guess, Jeong Jeong's hairstyle changed a lot.
Yes.
Because he's got like the weird like straw hat looking hair right now, but in that poster he had like a much tighter look.
Yeah. He's got an Albert Einstein thing going on right
now.
Right.
We end up following the gang into whatever city, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know what. I'm sure they gave it a name, but it was where the fire festival was being held. Yep. Which, again, this episode is Sokka's kind of annoying in this episode in the sense that he's just like arguing with everybody. He's very much the same Sokka that we met in the episode with the fortune teller.
Yeah. I feel like they give him episodes where he shines, and then they let him kind of digress and regress, I suppose, and be like the goofy person that he is. And sometimes it's arrogance and it's annoying and stuff like that. But actually, that's almost on theme with the episode, because Aang has had a lot of arrogance in this episode as well.
Yeah, and even though it's like Sokka is kind of annoying, he's only annoying in the sense he's just like kind of yelling the whole time.
Right. Well, you know what? We left Appa and Momo when they went to the city, right?
Oh my god! And in such the quote unquote, they are well. Momo is hiding,
right?
Okay,
Momo goes straight to that bush,
and so does Appa.
And that bush is way too small for Appa.
Yeah, that is a very funny part of this episode for me. I laughed out loud for that, and like. But Sokka's right. Like when he's arguing about going to the fire festival, even though it's him being like it's just annoying because he's yelling about it, he's right. Like just like he was with the fortune teller. Like he. Of course, you're wearing red shoes every day. You're gonna meet the person that you're meant to fall in love with.
Yeah.
You're Aang, the Avatar. Of course, something's wrong is going to happen when we go into a Fire Nation village and go to the fire
because
festival.
You're not trying to hide yourself at all at this point. You've still got what is very clearly air nomad garb. The other two are at least wearing like black cloaks.
Yep.
Like it would be okay, I think, more if one of them was doing something weird with their attire than him. Just because you figure everybody's got an eye out for the Avatar.
Yeah, and the fact that no one noticed him until he was unmasked is nuts. And I say unmasked, they started off with just wearing those hoods and walked into a festival of everyone wearing masks. So like not only did they stand out because like none of them are wearing Fire Nation garb. Yeah, they're wearing black cloaks, but they stuck out like a Thor song.
Oh yeah. Out of everybody, they definitely stick out as like newcomers to the city. Again, we know that people are looking for Aang because he's on the wanted board.
So, and there's just conveniently a vendor selling masks right there, which I'm sure that these masks have to pop up in your trivia because they're so different that they have to have some sort of meaning. Like Katara's almost seems like a geisha. Is that what they're called?
I mean, it could be like there's a little bit of kabuki to it.
Yeah.
But I don't like nothing came up in my trivia, so I don't know that it was anything other than like when they're swapping masks, they were just trying to look at like how they would best be represented.
Right. And like the sad red one went with Sokka and the happy blue one went with Aang. And which I saw that one. I was like, oh, that's where I got the Blue Spirit
you got some vibes, yeah.
And then they're just like kind of walking around the festival. There's Fire Nation food, which is it reminded me. Did you see the movie Elemental?
No, I did not see it. Rihanna watched it when one of the days where I was at work.
It's a good movie. It's a good Pixar movie. Not they're one of their best, but it's a cute movie. And it reminded me of like the fire elements and their part of town and like how they make like fire nuts or something. They just take like wood and make it really hot.
Right.
And it just reminded me of that and then Sokka's just throwing it back like it ain't nothing. Like he's on an episode of Hot Wings and he's Conan O'Brien. Hot Ones. And he's Conan O'Brien. And he's just whipping them back, and then he's all of a sudden his mouth is on fire.
Yeah, and I mean, you figure again, you stand out at that point.
Yeah, because most people, I would imagine that if you're Fire Nation, your palate is probably used to that hotter stuff. But even if it's not, even if you are adverse to hotness, to not gulp it down.
Not Sokka.
No, not Sokka. Sokka he thinks with his stomach first and foremost, for sure.
Yep. Now we pretty much turn from this into like their next, whatever fun experience, and that is watching the fire magician work his magic.
Yeah. There's a little puppet show with a Fire Lord and an Earthbender.
There was a little bit of that. That felt like so out of place because it was just so glossed over.
Yeah. It was really quick. I think it was really just kind of showing like, oh, this is a town full of Fire Nation children who are like being shown propaganda.
Yeah,
really.
they're being indoctrinated, basically.
Right. But then, yeah, it's the magician with the
Voiced
fire
by Scott
dragon.
Menville again.
What's that?
Voiced by Scott Menville again, the
Yeah,
Dark
he's
Cloud
just
2
showing up
actor.
everywhere.
Yep, he's doing a little bit of everything for this show.
And yeah, he's got the fire. He needs a volunteer, and Aang, who is like so doesn't know the meaning of like, yo, keep it cool.
Yeah,
Don't
be on the
stand-
down low.
Yeah, does not understand what that means. He's volunteering, and of course, Katara is the one that gets picked, and because his heart cannot trust that the magician is not going to hurt Katara. When the dragon's flying towards Katara, right before the magician is going to stop it, Aang blows their cover and stops it with his air bending, which was a very cool effect. Like, I guess
it kind of made the fireworks and everything.
Yeah, like I guess the magician had something in that fire dragon to like kind of confetti out or something.
Yeah, it almost reminded me a little bit of Lord of the Rings in the beginning in Fellowship, where Merry and Pippin steal the one thing of fireworks, and when it goes off, it's a dragon that explodes in the sky with fireworks. I wonder if that was a reference.
What? Yeah. When did Lord of the Rings come out?
I feel like this episode was 2005, and I feel like Lord of the Rings came out maybe like 2003, 2002. Well, Two Towers was 2002. Fellowship was 2001.
Wild that those movies are that old.
Yep.
Anyway, but then instantly, like, because now he's unmasked and he's got. If the air nomad clothing isn't a dead giveaway, the bald boy with an arrow on his head is a dead giveaway of that. It's the Avatar.
And he goes and does his Ashley Simpson hoedown. Like his little dance, which is the perfect, explanation of, I have no idea what I'm doing. Someone get me out of here.
Yep. And then Chey's there to the rescue. He says, "Hey, follow me." There's a little chase through town. The bison whistle makes its comeback.
I have that in my notes as well.
Yeah, it's a and if there was any question to whether that whistle works or not, I think it's been answered. It works.
Yes, it certainly works. We can definitively put that to bed because you figure this town has got to be so far away from Appa, but he still manages to pick up that the gang needs him.
Yes, yeah, and then we get this Chey's got these little firebomb things that he's been throwing to keep himself and the gang safe.
Yeah, I mean we kind of presented him as a dummy earlier, but at least as far as combat goes and rescuing the Avatar and his friends, he did a very good job.
He seems very competent up until after this moment. They get on, they get on Appa's back. He throws another bomb down into the cage of fireworks. Fireworks go off. There's a banner that sets something on fire that drops from Appa's tail or leg or whatever, and off they go. And then when they land.
In their kind of swampy area.
Yeah. Chey, he's just a massive fan of Jeong Jeong,
and a non-bender at that.
Yeah, he's not a bender. He's a massive fan of Jeong Jeong, who is a firebending master, and the deserter that the episode is named after.
Right, and the whole
thing of the episode is Aang is trying to find a firebender to teach him firebending. And thinks Jeong Jeong is the perfect person for him. But we were talking about it earlier. There's a little bit of arrogance in Aang in this episode because he just wants to learn. And I mean, to some extent, he thinks this is going to be his only opportunity for a while, so he can at least get started. But when he meets Jeong Jeong, after initially even hesitating to meet with him in the first place, Jeong Jeong tells him you're not ready for it. You need to go through the cycle. You need to go through the less destructive,
Right.
elements first before we can teach you firebending, because if you don't respect the other things, you're going to get in trouble.
Which I wonder, because we've talked about this in previous episodes, the cycle and how that affects the order that you learn bending. Because obviously, if Roku, he mastered firebending before he mastered anything else, and it really fire is clearly destructive, and we see that from so many different angles in the season and this episode especially. But like 100 years ago or 150 years ago, the Fire Nation wasn't like we assume wasn't gung-ho about taking over the world.
Right.
I mean, one of Aang's best friends was a firebender.
Right. And you would assume like Roku being who he was, he was one with like balance and everything as well. And he wouldn't have wanted that. Thus far, we don't know about any avatars being around who's like, yeah, I mean, I'm all about this life where we're taking over the world.
Right. And, but, so I wonder if like it's a modern day thing about learning how to bend, or if like it really is like, listen, like it doesn't matter what order you learn the other ones in, but you need to learn fire last unless you're a firebender.
Right.
Already.
And I mean, that could have been just Jeong Jeong with his personal experience with fire and how he thought, like I'm like almost like the flame's caretaker, and I'm aware of how deadly it can be. I think that you should go through this stuff because we know like from avatar to avatar, they're probably learning things differently.
Right.
Like Aang is doing it in this way, most likely because the ultimate enemy of this series is going to be a firebender. So what better way to kind of loop everything in to have, but then to have a firebender teach him at the end.
Right. And, well, then Roku makes another appearance through whatever,
Roku?
Yeah. Avatar Roku.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was thinking Zuko, and I was like, wait a minute, he's not in this episode. Roku ends up basically telling Jeong Jeong, like, yo, I'm the Avatar, he's the Avatar, teach him.
Yeah. Which ultimately, and I think everyone kind of agrees, and Aang himself would probably agree too, that it was too soon. And I think, Aang should have kind of realized a little bit that like he picked up waterbending pretty easily. Like, and we're on episode 17, right? No, 16 of book 1 Water,
right?
In like a 20 episode season. So like he's clearly gonna get somewhere to learn and master water as best as he can very soon. So he knows that he can pick up this stuff quickly, but if he doesn't have control over it, bad things can happen. And I get it. He's a 12-year-old kid, so he's just excited to like learn a new thing.
There's a little bit of desperation there too, because he thinks that he needs it as well. Like there is a little bit. You can see from scene to scene, he's excited to be able to play with this new element. But there's at least a little bit of it. Oh yeah.
The training scenes are they're kind of fun because like it's everything that he doesn't want to do. Like, let me just sit and breathe for hours.
Right.
Let me like stare at the sun. Let me
hold your leaf.
Right. But it's all like, it all falls in line with what Jeong Jeong is trying to teach him, and that's discipline, which, if it wasn't apparent before this episode, Aang does not have great discipline.
No.
Because he is a 12-year-old kid.
Yeah, he's a 12-year-old kid who wants to move very quickly with things. There's still distractions all over the place. But as it comes to learning things, he wants to be the very best, like no one ever was.
Bending powers, that is.
That's right. So he when he gets the leaf, he starts to realize that he has some basic control over the fire, but right from there, like even as he's getting warned, things start to spiral out of control.
Yeah, like Katara is there like, hey, maybe there's a reason he wants you to do this. Again, being the voice of reason. And this is probably like the most reckless Aang has been. Probably really could have been the straw that breaks the camel's back when it comes to his relationship with Sokka and Katara, because Katara gets badly hurt.
Yeah. And I mean, we already know her kind of aversion to fire based on what she experienced with her mom. So this was a big moment. I mean, they kind of,
One of the nice things about this episode is a lot happens in it, and like it's all one episode, but it feels like it could have almost been 2 episodes. Like I feel like you can judge the quality and the caliber of an episode by how long it feels, and it's not like this episode was any longer than the rest. But we had that whole shtick that happened in the city, all the training that Aang's been through at this point, and then they hurt, Aang accidentally hurts Katara and she runs off.
And it's Sokka loses it, rightfully so.
Yeah. I mean, I would not hold it against Sokka to be upset for Katara, especially, again, because of her history. Like, he knows that it's a big deal. And Aang ends up treating it as a learning experience, because later in the episode, he gets to show discipline and control.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, we didn't even really talk about Zhao coming back. He clearly, because of all the stuff that happened in the city where the fire festival was, he's back because the Avatar is nearby.
Right. And he is showing a lot of the same emotional beats as Aang. He's very arrogant. He's very like, we got to move quick with this. And I'm sure that was deliberate, like the way that they were choosing it.
Right. And Jeong Jeong even tells Aang a story, which seemingly at first makes Aang realize, oh, I need to like listen to you and have some control and take what you're saying very seriously. But Jeong Jeong tells him about this student of his that was just like not disciplined and, just an angry person.
Yeah. And we get to hear Zhao say that like he left because he was bored and stuff like that, kind of implying that he thought that he was bigger and better than Jeong.
Yes. And right, this is when when Aang gets to leave, like it's like, okay, like he started that scene off like saying, I understand, I'm going to listen to you, I'll be patient, and then instantly like just kind of takes things into his own hands. Meanwhile, Zhao's on some river boats on his way down the river to look for the Avatar. I don't know if he knows that like what we find out is like Zhao is the student.
Oh yeah. I don't think that you could have put 2 and 2 together. I mean, we might have been able to like suss it out because of like the structure of the episode and stuff. But I would imagine that like most kids watching it would not pick it up until it's referenced later when he says that he was
right. And I don't know if but while they're traveling down the river, though, I don't know if Zhao knows that Jeong Jeong is down there. Like I don't know if he's looking for more than just the Avatar. What he knows.
I mean, you would figure based on the fact that Jeong Jeong deserted, that nobody really knows where he is, and then we find out later that Jeong Jeong and like his people leave. So I would assume that he was trying to keep incognito. So I think this might have been a bonus for Zhao to run into his old master.
Right. And he attacks while we're skipping a very important part here. Katara, she ends up at like the river or whatever, and like her hands are hurting because they're burnt, so she puts them in the water to like soothe them, which I believe in real life when you don't have bending abilities is like the wrong thing to do, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think it can damage the nerves or something along those lines.
But in this instance, where not only is she a waterbender, but her bending abilities are so powerful that she's one of the few waterbenders that can also heal, and she heals her own hands from the burn. And as this is happening, Jeong Jeong walks up on her, and like basically, this is where you find out like some of the stuff about why like he doesn't like being a firebender.
Yeah,
he'd rather be a waterbender.
He does recognize it as a destructive force, and he would rather be a waterbender.
Yes, exactly. He would rather be a waterbender, be a calming spirit, whereas fire itself, as the theme of this episode, is so destructive. And you know what he also made a great point talking to Aang about like the rock, you need a rock to bend and to move it. But once the flame,
if you smell,
but once the flame's there, it's its own beast. And it's which kind of explains like what we've been talking about, like how these other elements need a source in order to actually like work, whereas maybe with firebending you don't, because it is so destructive.
Right. It's destructive, and it almost has like a will of its own. So
Yes.
you're bending it, and and firebenders can kind of will it into existence, but with some measure of control, I would say as well.
Yes. Um. So when
So
Zhao
I'll mention real
attacks,
quick before we get to Zhao.
yeah.
So this is at this point the second time in maybe 4 or 5 weeks that we've seen kind of like a special form of bending show up, because we had the lightning redirection that Iroh did, and at this point we see our second special form with the healing.
Oh yes, that's very yeah. Which is, again, like, what a cool little thing to throw in there, and it makes sense that it goes with water totally. And then, but yeah, so right at that riverbank is when Zhao is coming down the river. He's attacking. Jeong Jeong tells Katara, "Go get your friends, get out of here. It's not safe for you and you guys. Never come back." Which obviously sucks for. I mean, I assume that Jeong Jeong will likely be someone we see again down the road when it's really time for him to learn more about firebending.
He's one of the people who you think will show back up.
I think so. Again, unless this show throws me for a loop, and it ends up being like Zuko or Iroh or something.
Yeah.
I think at this point there's only 3 firebenders that could possibly be the ones that help Aang with firebending, and that's Jeong Jeong, who is the most logical one, not necessarily the one that will be doing it, but the most logical one at this point. And then, because we've seen Zuko and Iroh kind of like walk that fine line of being a villain and also being a caring person that could be redeemed.
Yeah.
I think they could possibly be the ones that also help Aang.
So yeah, we do see a lot of firebenders. At this point, we haven't seen too many like big name quote unquote earthbenders. Do you think that we've found his earthbender coach, teacher, so to speak, at this point, their master that's going to teach him bending there?
I mean, I guess the only one that comes to mind is, what was his friend's name? Boomy, yeah, but or one of Boomy's people or something. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, but but then Aang, much like the rest of this episode, refuses to listen to reason and get away. He wants to go save Jeong Jeong, which is fine. It's probably the right choice. These are the kind of quote unquote reckless decisions he makes that make sense.
Yeah. I mean, like, this person is obviously a good firebender. It's someone who would be good to keep on your side, and to keep healthy and alive and things like that. You figure if you need to change hearts and minds, he is a deserter, yes, but he's also, as we'll see in this fight, one of the most powerful firebenders that we've appeared to see on the show at this point.
Right. I mean, I think obviously the Fire Lord is probably more powerful, but we haven't seen much of that quite yet.
Right. Yeah. I think the big ones, I mean, we obviously see Zuko as a powerful bender, and combatant in general. Like, even if he's not using his fire, we've seen Iroh do what up until this point was like unthinkable with bending lightning, if redirecting it. And you could assume that, like, because Fire Lord Ozai is above both of them, that he's got some kind of talent, but we haven't been able to really qualify and quantify that yet. Right. Then we've seen a couple of other firebenders here and there who have names, but haven't really been able to impress us the way that those 3, and to some extent Zhao as well, have been able to thus far.
But JJ here, Jeong Jeong, he is, I think, so far the most powerful firebender we've seen on display.
Right, and that's what I have in my notes too, because he does like that huge wave of fire that starts to sweep up over towards the ships before Zhao kind of says, like, let's turn it towards the shore.
Yeah, and because, like, JJ has taken this vow of, like, not being a fighter anymore. And so, like, Zhao knows that he can kind of probably just walk through. So it's not really a huge fight here. But Aang shows up and like has enough distraction for Jeong Jeong to use his firebending to seemingly just disappear.
Yeah, Jeong Jeong just completely does like he uses fire as like a smoke bomb and cuts out, and that's why we end up getting the ability to have like a 1v1 with Aang versus Zhao, because the rest of the soldiers go after Jeong Jeong. We would assume that they never find him because
Right.
you know, at the end of the episode we see that the village that he kind of lived in has been abandoned, but we do get to see Aang in another 1v1 week after week. Last week we had Zuko. This week we have his fight with Zhao, and you can see right from the get-go, like Zhao can't really keep up with him.
Right. Not only can Zhao, and like Zhao, I think underestimates Aang because he's a kid.
Right.
And Aang not only uses that to his benefit, but like he realizes that, Zhao is like he has no control. He has no discipline.
Yep.
And he uses that against him. He doesn't have to throw a punch. He doesn't really have to do anything to hurt Zhao. He just needs to be smart and let Zhao destroy his own ships.
Yep. Channeling the calm man.
Yeah, very much so. Very much channeling the calm man. And Zhao now and his soldiers have to walk back to wherever they plan on going, because their ships are gone, their riverboats are gone. Aang and the rest of the gang are presumably on Appa. Oh, no, they are. We do see him on Appa flying away. You're not going to catch him. And Jeong Jeong and his crew, except for Chey, are in the winds, finding a new home.
Right. Yeah, they poor Chey is left behind, again, kind of looking like the dum-dum that he kind of presents as halfway through the episode. And it's funny because, again, like, this was another episode where a lot happened in so short a time, because we got the whole city stuff, we got all of Aang's training, we got healing, we've got the standoff between Jeong Jeong and Zhao before Aang shows up. Like, a lot is going on in this episode.
They've packed in the last two episodes so much into so little, and they have to, because we're entering into, I think, the last 4 episodes of this season here, and Aang still hasn't gotten to the North Pole, and still hasn't had a proper teacher for waterbending. Like, nothing against Katara, but like she did just learn how to heal herself with water, and she heals, and Aang's got a little burn at the end of this episode.
Right.
And like, it's revealed that she reveals to her brother and her friend that she can also heal people, to which Sokka overreacts about all the times he's had an injury.
Double fish hooks.
Yeah, double fish hooks. Using another fish hook to get the fish hook that was stuck out, which is a bad move, my man. Like,
you know what, though? I will 100% say that that's the kind of thing that I would do. I have been known to try and get a frisbee out of a tree with another frisbee.
So you would be Sokka. You would be a double fish hook.
I'd probably have like 7 fish hooks there. Like, all right, the first 2 didn't work, but
this is the one. Damn it!
Sunk cost fallacy at this point. Eventually, it has to work.
But yeah, very good episode. Very packed, but doesn't feel rushed or anything. Definitely one of the, I think, better episodes. I liked that we got to see some like good firebending and Aang, because I'm really curious about how he's going to learn fire, because there are so few people out there, I should say. They might be little, they could be big, I don't know. To teach him. Yeah. So I'm really curious about that one.
Right. The fun thing was, like, we didn't see him create fire from scratch in this episode. The only fire that he played with was the one that Jeong Jeong created in the leaf. Since then, we haven't seen him do anything. Now,
that's true.
We do see, like, obviously Katara learned waterbending on her own. So like in that kind of case, are the avatars able to some extent learn on their own? Like, has he learned enough at this point to at least be able to do some basic stuff with fire? or is he still going to have to start from scratch whenever he finds
Right.
whatever his new master is, whether that's somebody else or if it's Jeong Jeong down the line.
Right. I mean, I stand by the fact that because he's a master airbender, that I think helps. Like there's a reason he was able to pick up waterbending so quickly, and one could argue whether he picked up firebending or not. He was able to take almost just embers and create a massive flame with it.
Right.
So, you know, I think that he could. I think that being the 12-year-old kid, like he still is too much of a kid, I think, to properly teach himself fire.
Right. No, I think you're right. I think we if we do see any of like his fire bending, it's going to be tapered to some extent to make sure that like when he learns it later, it's still got a lot of emphasis and a lot of importance.
Right. I could also foresee that maybe he uses it in the future to like stop fire. But you know, maybe not, because he also has air, which stops it. He also has water, which stops it. So I mean, he has plenty of things in his, I think, back pocket now that could be used to help, you know, against the Fire Nation. He clearly needs to, again, I mean, every time I see him work with fire, he's doing it pretty good. So I'm really curious what his time in the North Pole is going to be spent doing. And whatnot.
And it'll be interesting. Again, we've talked a little bit about like, hey, we've seen like one potential person who could be his earthbending mentor. We've seen the person who could be his. We've seen a couple people who could be a firebending mentor. The whole shtick of him going to the North Pole is to find his waterbending mentor as well. So,
right.
Arguably, we have not seen that person yet.
Right. All right. Well, like I said, I love this episode. I think it was really good. Definitely. I mean, we're more than halfway through. I think it's probably, you know, if we're 16 episodes in, it's probably in like the front half of like quality, like definitely a top 8 to 10 episode for sure.
Yeah. How does it compare to the previous episode? Like the last one was a 7.7. As far as IMDb cares, this is an 8.4 out of 10.
I mean, it's better for I liked it more for sure. I thought it, but if you compare the two, I think they both had equal amounts of like pushing the story forward and filler. Actually, I would argue that maybe that the previous episode potentially pushed the story forward further, at least when it comes to Sokka and Katara.
I wouldn't bring this score down for the deserter, but I would bring the score up
100%.
Yeah.
I would honestly, if this is an 8.4 and we're going to use this as our like litmus test right now, I would say that the previous episode should have been an 8.2 or 8.3.
Right. Yeah, I agree. If not higher. Yeah. You know, this episode was really good. Both episodes had their strengths, and I don't think had too much of a fault, like a drawback. Like there wasn't like so much that felt trivial or anything like that.
No, this was a great back-to-back watch for sure.
Yep.
So
what do you mean? We watch everything week to week?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Back-to-back weeks. All right, Mike, hit us with that trivia if you have any.
So we already talked about the posters, but so Nickelodeon used to do this thing called Avatar Extras, and Avatar Extras used to do like kind of like, you remember like pop-up video where like they would have like trivia on the screens and stuff like that?
Yes.
So there was an Avatar Extras episode of The Deserter, which kind of went into a little bit more about like the world that they lived in, and they were saying that the fire festivals are thrown for the Fire Nation citizens living in the occupied Earth Kingdom territory in order to make them feel at home.
Oh, okay.
So just kind of a little cool thing there.
That's it. That's all.
That's it, because we already wove in some other stuff, and the other trivia that I know is great for someone who's watched the entire series. I could try and do the vague thing, and we'll say that at least one of the characters who we saw in this episode will be at least a one-time recurring character.
That's either Chey or Jeong Jeong.
Hey, could be that Scott Menville,
Oh,
Fire
the
Magician.
magician. Yeah. Well, we'll have to, when we're like done the series, we'll have to see if you can come back to the trivia that you skipped and like just go over that.
Right. It's very funny, like reading through. Well, number one, going through the series again, because we're talking about a show that I watched probably like 7 years ago at this point, maybe more, and watched 3 seasons, 4 seasons of the follow up, the movie, the new Netflix special or a Netflix series. There's a lot to like go in and out of my head, and I am a repository of useless information, so I kept on to something. So like I knew about the character showing up again, even before I had to go to the trivia section. I was like turning to Rihanna and I was like, is that person? So it is fun to be able to like, even like in like the narrow strokes, be able to see those things that pay off later.
I'm excited to experience it firsthand.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, it's kind of fun to be able to tell you like, hey, there was something here, but you're not going to know until it happens.
Right.
But it is a good sign, because I think that a show that's willing to express the world that they're in, that is willing to do callbacks, I think that that's usually a show that cares about their fans.
Yeah, for sure. And it just helps it make it feel more lived in.
Yes. Yeah. There's a richness and a depth to the world that you don't get otherwise.
But I mean, we are like officially in the final countdown of season 1 of both Avatar: The Last Airbender and Avatar State Radio.
Right. Yeah, we have, I guess, the 4 episodes left of the show, and then I don't know if we would call our thing kind of like a Doctor Who special where we watch M. Night Shyamalan's movie and call that like a bonus episode, or if that's still part of season 1. But
I think it's just like Doctor Who's Christmas special, whereas it's a bonus, but they usually count it as one of the seasons, like either season 1 or like the end of season 1 or the beginning of season 2.
Right. And then we have to determine, are we doing is season 2 of our show going to be the new Netflix show, or is that going to be something like a specialty season as well?
Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to figure that out off air. But all right, folks, it's that time. And I only know that because I hear my dog barking out back, ready to come in, and he's being very annoying. So I must shut the lights off Avatar State Radio Studios right now. So make sure you go to avatarstateradio.com. There you can watch, and by watch, I mean listen to all our episodes of the podcast. We don't do video here. And you can find the social media links to both Mike and I, but I'm going to give it to you right now anyway. You can find me on most social media at thatnerdykev, thatnerdykev.com. Again, that's thatnerdykev.com is my personal website. And I also host a podcast called Everything is Awesome, which you can find on all your favorite podcast platforms or awesomepodcast.com. Mike, where can they find you?
So you can find me on tellus.com. That's a great first place to look. That'll usually bring you to a bunch of the other projects that we do. I'm going to shake things up a little bit today, and I'm going to show you 2 other places that you can find me on the internet and not sell you stuff. youtube.com/@worldoftellus is a great place to see all the videos that we've done in the past. I also do another podcast called Talking Tellus. Or you can see me on twitch.tv/thattellusguy on Tuesdays and Wednesdays when I'm making maps for tabletop.
The newly affiliated Twitch affiliate?
Yeah, buddy. I became an affiliate today, and I got to play with a lot of the new stuff. And I'm not really going to be able to experience it until later this evening when I run another map and see like the emotes and the channel points and everything like that. It's going to be interesting. I have to run an ad tonight.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Yeah. All right. Well, on that note, if you want to sponsor this podcast, please get in touch. info@starbirdmediallc.com. But make sure you turn off those lights as you exit the building. For Avatar State Radio, I am Kev, the last podbender.
I'm Mike, the Pavatar.
And we'll catch you right here next week, right on avatarstateradio.com.